Okay, I've got a Samsung Galaxy Note and an Apple iPhone 4S. The title of this video is What I Hate About Android. And if you're an Apple fan, you might like it. If you're an Android fan, you can check out my other video that I just did. That's called What I Hate About the iPhone. So I actually really like both these devices, but there are things about both of them that I really don't like compared to the other one. The biggest for Android, the most glaring, is probably the instability of the OS. Things like application crashes, lag, battery life. The iPhone has it down pat in terms of stability, applications that run fairly bug-free, fairly crash-free, very smooth user OS, very nice to use, very user-friendly. Android, it's great, but there's definitely lag. There's definitely slowdowns. There's definitely crashiness. There's definitely bugs. This phone in particular has a custom ROM on it, and so this isn't a good example. But in general, you have things like fragmentation, which are the different operating systems that Google has released. You've heard probably names like Android 2.3 Gingerbread, Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich, Android 3.0 Honeycomb. And so when you have stuff like fragmentation, phone makers don't produce the updates as quickly, people get left behind, people get upset. But my biggest complaint is just the instability of the kernel, which is how the phone runs and how smooth it is. And they've done a pretty good job with Android 4. But in general, you still see some lag, you still see some crashes, you still see some hiccups. I think that pales in comparison to how good the iPhone is in terms of its smoothness and user interface. Right? And so you'll get weird little buggy crashes like what's going on right here. Like I can't do anything and the phone is buzzing. Let's see if I can get it to actually crash. Yeah, there we go. So this kind of stuff really, really, really irritates me. Okay, another thing that I really hate about Android, and they just changed this in Android 4, is that images that are attached to your emails no longer show up in line. And so, like if I click on this email from my security camera out front, where are the images? Where are the thumbnails? Where are the attachments? I have to now click view, and then it has to go out and download, and then I can view it. But if I do it on the iPhone, it's already in line. And so I don't have to press any extra buttons. I don't have to wait. If it receives the email, it automatically includes the message in a nice formatted inline email. And that same thing goes for other email messages from places like, that you get HTML codes. So if you have a message, let's say from Costco, if I click on my Costco news here and want to view the actual the HTML coded email, if I go show pictures, right, it's now big and I have to scroll, which I mean is okay, but if I compare it to the iPhone organizes it very neatly. It's all on one page, or excuse me, not one page, but one page width. The scrolling is really smooth. If I want to zoom in, I can double tap and then zoom in. This is a lot nicer. This is a lot better for viewing than having something that's full size and takes up the whole screen and that you can't see, that you've got to sort of pan around and try and figure out what you're doing. The other thing that really irritates me and that I hate about Android is that even though it's great to have diversity in what type of hardware you have, the downside to that is that finding accessories for each of these individual phones is a complete nightmare. I've got the latest and greatest Galaxy Note here, as well as the latest and greatest Apple iPhone 4S. Now, do you think if I go down to Best Buy or Radio Shack, they're going to have a speaker dock for my Galaxy Note? No. Do you think they're going to have one for the iPhone? Absolutely. And that goes for cars, that goes for car accessories, that goes for plugs, docks, everything under the sun. There's so many accessories for the iPhone. There's so few accessories for each of these individual Android handsets. And I realize that, accessory makers can't keep up with all these new Android phones, but that definitely is annoying. If I want to go and if I stay at a hotel, they're likely to have an iPhone dock, but they're certainly not going to have a dock with a mini USB or a micro USB or whatever is on the bottom of this thing. And so that's definitely something to consider. And so one of the last things that I really hate about Android, and I think this goes without speaking for a lot of people, is the application support. And I know a lot of people argue that, yeah, you can find everything on the Android market that you're likely to use and blah, blah, blah. And there is a lot of truth to that statement, that the Android market does have a lot of apps. It's definitely growing. But not everything that's available on the iPhone is available on Android. And typically, stuff that comes out for the iPhone usually comes out first. Applications that are developed usually come out for the iPhone first before they're ported over to Android. Not all the time, but a lot of the times. The other thing that is frustrating with applications are that some of my favorite apps, like for example Instagram, consider myself a bit of a photographer, I like photography. Instagram is probably one of the most downloaded iPhone apps on the planet. And it's really, really cool. And you know what? There's not a version for Android. There's similar applications for Android, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the detail, it doesn't have the nice filters, it doesn't have the cool user interface and online community that Instagram has. And so you do tend to run into that a lot with Android apps. I mean, yes, there's an app to do everything, but it might not be the same app you're familiar with on the iPhone. And so if you think you can get everything on the Android, you might want to check that out first before you actually go out and get one if you're coming from the iPhone. But that being said, I do like both these phones, and if you want to check out the reasons why I hate the iPhone over the Android, look at the rest of my videos. We'll talk to you guys soon.